All right, hello team, and welcome to the Example Podcast March edition. However, my guest has not actually made it today. Okay, he was ended up being double booked. So I was thinking about should I try and get someone else to speak in last minute, all rushed, and then I thought, do you know what? I'll actually just give everyone little 10-15 minutes of sort of where my thinking's been taking me recently, where my reading's been going, and then give you something practical that you can actually take away and hopefully help improve or make some small changes to your fitness, to your nutrition, to how you're going about your day. So stick with me here. I've got my book all highlighted. I've got some notes. I'm sitting at my desk. I've got my squeaky chair, which will probably be in the background a little bit. It's a beautiful day outside. And we'll see if we can't get you 1% better today. All right. So what I'm going to be talking about today is self-esteem. And that word gets thrown around a lot. And I don't think before reading this book, and obviously tell you what book I'm reading recently, I actually knew a concrete definition for what self-esteem is. But first of all, I'm going to explain that to you, explain the parts that make it up, and then show you a practical way that I think you can apply the teachings in this book to your fitness, to your nutrition, to your habits with activities that you will actually go away and do. Okay, so the book that I'm talking about, guys, is the 6 Pillars of Self Esteem, and it's written by Nathaniel Branden. It's the first book I've read of his, but I will definitely read more. It was really informative, and I learned a lot. I really did learn a lot. Obviously, as the title says, 6 pillars. We will get to that and what they are and how they come about. But I think the most important starting point is going to be what is self-esteem and what is his definition of self-esteem. So he says that self-esteem is built up of 2 different channels. Okay, one is self-efficacy and the other one is self-respect. And he believes those 2 things together make up self-esteem. Now, his definition of self-efficacy is the confidence in the function of my mind, my ability to think, understand, learn, choose, and make appropriate decisions. So basically, in plain terms, it's the belief that you can handle life, that you're going to be able to figure it out, that problems are going to come up, you're going to be able to solve them, and that you can trust your judgment, you can trust your own mind. Okay, not always about being right. You don't have to be correct every single time. But even if a mistake comes or a challenge comes, you're confident that you can navigate that and get yourself back on track. The second part is self-respect. And this one, I think, runs a little bit deeper and it's a little bit harder to pinpoint for me. And the reason is because of his definition. And the definition is the conviction that I am worthy of happiness, that I deserve to live, to be loved, and to express my needs and values. So again, speaking in plain terms, it's the belief that you deserve a good life, so that you matter, your needs are valid, and you don't have to earn the right to exist here. So you can see how that one has got a couple more layers to it. The first one is, can I learn the skills and be able to navigate my life in the way that I want to? But the second one, as I said, a little bit deeper, probably a lot heavier stuff goes into that, and that's, do I deserve a good life? Okay, so the combination of those 2 leads you to his explanation, or definition, I should say, of self-esteem. And that is, let me flick to the right page in the book. Self-esteem is the disposition to experience oneself as competent to cope with the basic challenges of life and as worthy of happiness. So as you can see, exactly those 2 things pushed together. Now, throughout this book, he says that, there's 6 pillars of self-esteem and there's ways that you can raise your self-esteem. But I think something to remember is self-esteem, it's similar to a growth mindset. Now, some people, especially if you've been around children, you'll recognize that self-esteem is almost in your DNA. Okay, it's genetic. You'll see some kids can come from a crazy background, really tough life at home, but their self-esteem, that I can do it, their resilience to the challenges of life is right there. And other kids might seem to have everything they need going on, but they're maybe scared to attempt new challenges or feeling maybe that they're not worthy of being the lead in the school play or something like that. It's important to remember that, yes, you can improve it, but different people start at different places, and there's no real rhyme or reason to where that is, really. So hopefully that is making sense in as far as what self-esteem is. And I'm going to talk to you today about how to apply that to your fitness and your nutrition. Okay, and your habits a little bit, but it's more clear-cut, I think, with the activity at the end, with your fitness and your nutrition. The second piece that I think is really important before we start talking about the activity and how we're going to raise our self-esteem in the 6 pillars is to understand this term of consciousness. Now, I think that gets thrown around a lot. You see it on social media. It's from my lower self. I was acting from my higher self. Or he's living consciously. And I think it can be really confusing as to exactly what that means. So again, I'm going to give you Nathaniel Braden's definition. It's one that I think is really good and actually really easy to digest when you think about it. So his definition is the faculty of awareness, the ability to perceive that which exists. And again, in a little bit more of simpler terms, it's just your capacity to be aware of reality, what is real and factual. So it's to see and to think, focus and understand what's actually in front of me. Okay? The crazy thing is that this is not built in. It's not automatic. We are the only species that can create a vision of what my value should be and what I should be doing, and then consciously choose to act against it. Okay? Which, to put that in an explanation or an example, that's going to be I know that I should be eating well, and I know these things are good for me, and I even know that that's what I want, and then we would still avoid eating healthy foods and go and buy fast food. So you can see how it's not automatic. Just because we know what to do doesn't mean that we're going to go and do that, okay? And this can be seen as high consciousness would be to focus, low consciousness might be to drift. High consciousness would be thinking, low consciousness avoiding thinking, right? Which we've all done at various different times. This isn't to be this person is very high self-esteem all the time. No, you're probably on a continuum somewhere. And even then, on a continuum, depending on what exactly we're talking about. But the last piece of that is high consciousness is to face facts, and low consciousness would be to deny them. In the book, Branden frames it this way. So he says you can't escape the responsibility of your consciousness. So you can avoid thinking, but reality doesn't go away. You can ignore problems, but they're still going to operate in the background. And you can numb it out, but your life is still going to reflect it anyway. So when you think about that, he talks about dimming your consciousness and brightening your consciousness. So as you start to brighten your consciousness, you become more aware of things. So you start paying attention to your habits instead of running on autopilot. You might have to start admitting when something isn't working, asking what's true instead of what's comfortable. And then you've got to be present enough to actually choose your actions. So as you can see, all of that starts with a more raised awareness of what is true and what is factual and what's actually going on. And then you have to raise your responsibility, because now you're aware of it. Now you're responsible for finding a solution. And obviously, if you're of high self-esteem, you will start to work towards that. If you're on low self-esteem, you'll turn conscious away, as I said earlier, and we can actually choose to avoid doing what we know is right, and even doing what we know we want, to go and find what's comfortable. And you can see why that can be scary, right? Because now I've raised the awareness about what I'm doing, and you can't go back. Once you've raised that up, you've seen it. You've seen it. So a term I like is it's like a snake going down a bamboo shoot, or swallowing a porcupine. You know it's there. Going back the other way is going to be more difficult now. But yeah, then you got to take the responsibility to actually make the action happen. So I hope you're staying with me here. I hope that's making sense. But those two things I think are really important to understand before we move on to the next part of it. So self-esteem is, I believe that I can cope with life and I deserve to be happy. And then consciousness is to be aware of reality, what is fact. Okay? So with that in mind, guys, we'll move on to what the 6 pillars actually are. And I've tried to write down just some more tangible examples for you. So alongside letting you know what the pillar is, a little bit about it, I've tried to write down something that you can actually get hold of yourself and understand a little bit more. So here we go. Obviously, number one is living consciously, that one that we just explained, being aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's actually true. So facing reality instead of avoiding it, paying attention to your thoughts, your actions, your environment, and then acting with awareness. That word that we said that starts all change is awareness, and not from autopilot. So for an example here would be, you get your blood work back, it's not good results, and then you don't do anything about it anyway. That would be not living consciously, right? You're choosing to avoid what is real, the facts, and what's dangerous. So living consciously would be like taking it really seriously, making some changes. Number two is self-acceptance. So owning who you are, warts and all, without denial or self-hate. And now this can be really difficult, right? This is me right now, not this is me forever. So I've written down here, it's really about meeting yourself where you're at. Accepting your feelings, accepting your mistakes that you've done, without judging yourself. Now, a lot of us will be our self-talk. If you're unaware of it, you realize actually when you start to raise the awareness of how you speak to yourself, it's really negative. So this self-acceptance can be a very big step to get over. And it's something, it's not like, oh, bang, I'm accepting myself right away. It's little bits and pieces that you have to start to build together. Same with all of these pillars. It's not like, bosh, got it now, I'm self-responsible or whatever. But really becoming aware of how you talk to yourself and just giving yourself a little bit more compassion and grace. So number two is self-acceptance. Number three is going to be self-responsibility. So taking ownership of your life and outcomes. So I'm responsible for my choices, actions, not blaming circumstances or people. And remember that you're the driver, right? On this podcast, we say that you're the captain of the ship. So that, for me, a real practical example would be, it's raining outside. Oh, I can't go and walk. Well, obviously you can. You need to take responsibility for your outcomes. Can't blame the circumstance, which is the rain. Just go and get it done. And a really good book on that, guys, is called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. If anyone's ever read that one, let me know. But that's a bloody brilliant book. Number four, self-assertiveness. Expressing your thoughts, needs, and values honestly. So speaking up instead of shrinking. Setting boundaries and asking for what you want. So if someone is of low self-esteem, you'll often find that they get walked all over. They're maybe a yes man or a yes woman. So this can be super difficult to start learning to do. And one thing that I think tied into the journey of change is that at some point, the people who you used to hang around with have this idea of who you are. And on this journey to becoming someone new, you're going to have to upset that version or that vision that they have for you. And and the practical example I can think of here is super easy. It's like, I always go out drinking with these guys, and we go out Friday and Saturday and maybe Sunday morning for a brunch. But now I'm like, I'm not enjoying how I'm feeling come Monday, and I'm aware of the toll it's taking on me physically, and my health. So I need to set a boundary that's like, hey, do you know what? Maybe I'll come out for a couple on Friday, but I'm not going to be on it all weekend. So that's a practical example of what self-assertiveness might look like. Number five is living purposefully. So using your time and energy intentionally towards a meaningful goal, having direction, not just drifting through life, setting goals and following through. And that means aligning your daily actions with what you want the long-term outcome to be. So again, a practical example is going to be, if I set a weight goal, am I weighing myself and tracking towards hopefully the direction I'm trending in? Am I tracking my calories? Am I making sure I'm, say I'm going to go to the gym 3 times and I get it done? So that would be living purposefully. And then the last one, personal integrity, which is being consistent with your values and actually doing what you say you'll do. And I think that this is a massive one, guys, because it breaks down when you break promises that you keep to yourself. Now, I'll say that again. It breaks down your personal integrity when you break promises that you make to yourself. And the reason why that is so powerful is that no one else can see these promises. And I think this is why a lot of people, they can't trust themselves. They know that they've tried this before and they let themselves down. You know, they said they were going to go walking today and they didn't, but it doesn't really matter to anybody else. They said they weren't going to drink and then they've drunk again this weekend, or I wasn't going to get fast food and I went out and got it, but no one can see me eating it in my car. So this is where I think it's really dangerous, guys, with the personal integrity piece, because we've all acted out of integrity, right? Each and every one of us has. And if you keep that at the forefront of your mind, you victimize yourself, that is going to weigh really, really heavy on you and make building your self-esteem super hard. You have to come with a certain amount of grace, a certain amount of forgiveness right at the very beginning, before you start building these little wins, these little votes, this stack of evidence for the new version of you, for the next version of you that does act in alignment with exactly what they say they do. So that pillar for me is a really big one, and I think it's really private and personal, that you have to give yourself grace and forgiveness for the situation that you're in right now and all the times that you have let yourself down. Hopefully those are making sense. And now each of them is important in their own way. And we're really going to focus on today, because we've been speaking about consciousness, and that first step to change is awareness. So we're going to focus on your awareness. And how we're going to do that is we're going to do a little sentence stem completion activity. Now, this is something that Nathaniel Branden is massive on. He gives you so many different examples in the book of how to do the activity, which I'll explain, and then how to apply it to all different areas of your life and the pillars. But for the sake of this podcast, we are going to focus on awareness, as I said, because that's the start of change. And we're going to apply it to, you can choose either your food choices or your working out. Okay? And how you do it is you're going to set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll write this stem at the top of the page. If I brought 5% more awareness to my food choices, if you're doing the nutrition one, if you want to do the fitness one, it would be if I brought 5% more awareness to my fitness and exercise. So that's the beginning of the stem. And then what you're going to do really quickly is complete 6 to 10 endings of it. So if I brought, and don't overthink it, right? Just finish the sentence however your mind goes. There's no judging it. There's no editing it. There's no like trying to be smart and get the right answer. Remember, consciousness is about just the truth and what is factual. And you will know that. You'll instinctually know that. So for an example, don't copy these again. You're going to have to go and do it on your own. But if I brought 5% more awareness to my food choices, I'd realize I snack when I'm stressed, not hungry. If I brought 5% more awareness to my food choices, I'd slow down when I eat at night. If I brought 5% more awareness to my food choices, I'd notice I'm already full but keep going. I'd plan meals instead of winging it. I'd stop pretending that weekends don't count. I'd eat differently when I'm around certain people. So you can see how you just scribble those out as quick as you can, 6 to 10. Now he likes you to do this every day of the week, all week. And then when you get to the weekend, you would answer the sentence stem in the same thing, a few quick answers of, if any of what I've written here is true, what might I do? So hopefully you can see how this is something that you can do. It's raising your awareness, your thinking around just one element, which is your food choices. And actually something that you might end up coming away with, something that you can change. And the reason why this works is because it starts out with just 5%. Well, why 5%? Because if we try and fix like, oh, I need to change my whole diet, I'm going to start by, that mountain is too big. There's no way that you're going to be able to even just scribble down things, because you're not going to know where to start. Whereas the 5% feels like, okay, that's easy, that's nothing crazy, and it's something doable. So you can actually get behind it instead of shutting down or turning away because it's too big. Another reason why this works, guys, is that you're not forcing the change. As I said, the start of all change is awareness. So that's all we're doing here, is inviting awareness around, okay, how am I eating actually? What am I doing in my fitness and exercise? Why am I avoiding it? And from there, you already know what's going wrong. You need to be honest with yourself, and hopefully this activity sort of pulls the answers out of you without pressure. We're not telling you have to go and change these things, just telling you to be aware of it, right? So noticing what's actually doing, catching the way that you're behaving, and then hopefully you can go and change something that you've written down. And not a massive change. It doesn't have to be an overhaul. As I said, that last sentence, if any of what I've written here is true, I might. Maybe you can just pick one thing up there, right? I decide not to drive that way home because I keep stopping at the McDonald's on the bottom of the street. That's what I used to do on the way home from coaching. I'd always get off one exit early, go past McDonald's and order 2 meals, and I was the only one eating. So I noticed that, I need to change that. Let me get off on the proper exit. Then that takes that whole thing out of the way. I nearly asked, has anyone got any questions? Obviously, no one's got any questions. I'm just talking to you lot. But I hope that makes sense, guys. Again, in the book, he likes you to do it every morning, all week. So you'd answer that sentence then. If I brought 5% more awareness to my food choices, and then at the end of the week, on the weekend, you would answer the question, if any of what I've written is true, it might be helpful if I, and then you'll finish that sentence as well. And there can be loads of repeat answers, guys. It's not like I have to come up with 6 new sentences each time. But just notice then what keeps coming out. Okay, what am I really aware of? Maybe that's the biggest lever that you need to go and change. Hopefully that is making sense, and hopefully that is valuable, and that's something that you can actually take away, actually go and do, and then actually implement on your own. Now, it's never as fun doing it by yourself. It's always more fun when you're doing it with someone, or you've got someone to talk through these answers to. So if you did give this a go, please let me know. Reach out to me. I'm more than happy to sit down with 15 minutes with anybody and just think about, just question your thinking there. Is that true for you? Is that definitely true for you? What might you do? Is this your plan? How are you going to do that? These are the sorts of questions that then start to create a little concrete plan in your mind and actually make a small step to the changes that you want to make around your fitness and nutrition. So if you did do it and you wrote down your 6 to 10, even if you've done it one time and then you answered, look, if it might be true, let me know and get hold of me. You can message me on Instagram at Coach Kenton. Just shoot me a message on there. I check it all the time. Or you can find me on Facebook, Matthew Kenton, or on LinkedIn, Matthew Kenton, and shoot me a message. Say, hey, listen to your podcast on self-esteem. I've done the activity. Do you have 10 minutes that we can talk through this? And I promise you, I'll make that time for you. All right, team. Well, hopefully that's not been too much of a hard listen for you. And you're not sitting there praying that his guest shows up next time. We have rescheduled, so that guest will be in April 15th. And I'm really excited for that conversation. And usually I sign off with a thank you to my guest, and I've got a little piece written out about how important they are and what they mean to me and how impressed I am. But because it's just me and you, I'm going to say, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. Hopefully you got to the end. Hopefully you've took something valuable away, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and hopefully you're learning, and we're all trying to make each other a little bit better. Okay, take care, team, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.